Chad's president is killed while visiting soldiers fighting rebels in the north. Idriss Deby leaves behind a power vacuum in an already unstable region. So what's next for Chad and the battle for stability in Africa's Sahel? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mohammed Jamjoom. The death of Chad's president is throwing the country and its neighbors into disarray. Idriss Deby led with an authoritarian grip for 30 years and had just won re-election in a disputed poll. Despite this, Western nations saw Deby as a crucial ally in Africa's Sahel region. The 68-year-old was killed while leading troops near the northern border with Libya. Chad's forces had been battling a rebel group known as FACT. The armies dissolved the government and appointed Deby's son as interim leader. This goes against the constitution. That's also been scrapped. But the military says it'll only be in charge for 18 months.
Les forces de défense et de sécurité.
The defense and security forces are not seeking to seize power. We would like to reassure that the members of the Transitional Military Council will hand over power to a civilian government after free and democratic elections within 18 months.
Many of Chad's allies have paid tribute to Deby. His death could have wider implications for security in the Sahel. Chad contributes one of the highest number of troops to the fight against armed groups in the region. Ahmed Idris reports from Nigeria's capital, Abuja.
Idriss Deby presented himself as a strong leader, and that's what he was for his allies in the West and in Africa. This was him on the battlefront near Lake Chad last year, when his troops fought and eventually expelled Boko Haram in an ISIL-affiliated group. His death on another battlefront is a huge blow to allies and the fight against armed groups in the Sahel and elsewhere in Africa. There are concerns that with security challenges increasing at home, the country may limit or even reduce its participation in external conflicts.
It was reported 2 or 3 days ago that Deby, before he died, was moving units that he had deployed to Mali and Niger back to Chad to help defend the capital. These are some of his best units. So if the current interim government has to keep those units in Chad for security purposes, then that would disrupt, at least in the short term, France's and the broader G5's counterterrorism efforts in Mali and Niger.
And those rebels remain a threat.
A further deterioration of security in Chad could trigger the withdrawal of its troops from regional hotspots to bolster security at home. This will in turn leave many countries in the Sahel and Lake Chad regions more vulnerable, since Chadian troops there play a significant role in stopping armed groups from overrunning many communities.
Chad, a country with a history of coups, civil war and tribal conflicts, is battling various rebel groups, the latest being the one in which President Deby lost his life. The group was until a year ago based in Libya and was fighting alongside mercenaries under Khalifa Haftar.
Ironically, one of the reasons that they're coming back into Chad right now is because of the peace agreement that was forged under the United Nations auspices in Libya, requiring all foreign armies to leave the country. And so they're doing just that. They're bringing with them the training and the arms that they gained inside of Libya, and they're bringing them to Chad.
With the region awash with heavy and small weapons from the Libya conflict, experts say Chad and the entire region could see an uptick in violence by rebels and armed groups in coming months. Western powers consider Deby as a dependable ally and would want Chadian forces to continue to play that role. But with the new military government having so much to deal with right now, there are no guarantees that Chadian troops will continue to fight others' battles while there is trouble at home. Ahmed Idris, Al Jazeera, Abuja.
All right, let's bring in our guests in Moscow. Mahamoud Adam Bechir, Chad's ambassador to Russia. Here in Doha, Waleed Madibo, president of the Sudan Policy Forum. And in Accra, Ghana, Emmanuel Kwesi Aning, director of research at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. Welcome to the program. Mahamoud, let me start with you today. How worrying is all of this for Chad, and what is the level of concern in the country?
Thank you so much for this opportunity. First of all, allow me to give my condolences to all the Chadian people and the family of the president, his friends, the head of states, African head of states, his brothers, and all the African people who are shocked by the tragic event of the death of the President Idriss Deby Itno. The situation, of course, the death of Idriss Deby Itno could not easily be filled, but still the country will continue, and the military council for transition, the transition military council will continue the commitments of Chad, all the agreements of Chad, and the running of the state until the elections after 18 months.
Kwesi, from your vantage point, do you believe that this is going to lead to instability in Chad? And what would instability in Chad mean for the region?
Well, I certainly do believe that this surprising turn of events after having won an election with over 79% of the popular vote, allegedly, and this death certainly would lead to some movements and upheavals in Chad. Let's not forget the history, the political and military history of Chad from the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, prior to the late Deby taking over. The role of the supporters and the ethnic groups of Hisan Habre and Gukuni Wede, the old role played by Libya, and now with the downward movement of the Front for Change and Concord, once more from Libya as a spin-off to the UN agreement, certainly the domestic challenges in Chad will continue to worsen. The 18-month timetable that has been established for an election is not feasible, precisely because other forms of elections at a lower level have continuously been suspended, excuses given, so that the narrative from N'Djamena now about an election and an electoral timetable, I don't think is going to cut ice with the ordinary people. Nevertheless, what we are going to see is that Chad's domestic insecurities might possibly contribute to the withdrawal of Chadian troops from, Miska in Central African Republic, a reduction of their activities in Nigeria and in Mali. Mm-hmm. President Deby managed to locate Chad precisely because of the toughness of his troops in doing the dirty work that the international community and our critical partners were not prepared to put their soldiers through, and created a reputation for Chad and himself as a stabilizing force in the region. In pulling back troops.
Kwesi, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but let me get back to you about that point in just a few moments, because I want to now go to Waleed, and I want to ask him about the fact that there's still a lot of questions surrounding the death of President Deby. I mean, at the moment, it's the military that's really in control of the narrative, is it not? And do we know any more specific details about the injuries that President Deby sustained that led to his death?
We're not yet sure that has it been an assassination or is it just an injury that led to his death? But what we know for sure is that we are witnessing the death of a very strong man, albeit an autocrat, an authoritarian leader who, at the expense of galvanizing his power, he spared no effort to debilitate the strength of the civic society in Chad. He exploited all sorts of ethnic and tribal cleavages. And obviously, the situation in Chad exposes the hypocrisy of the West, in particular France, because France has been giving Deby full support, knowing that he is an autocrat who has been, weakening. He has been weakening the civic society. He made no effort for a transition to democracy. And what we see now is just a military coup d'etat, and he has been making an effort to pass power to his son, but his son doesn't have the credibility. He doesn't have the charisma that, whether we like it or not, Deby enjoyed. He had some charisma, but this young guy, he doesn't have any charisma, nor does he have any experience aside from military experience. He doesn't have any political leverage by which he can pull together the Chadian society and make a transition to democracy.
Mahamoud, Waleed was just talking there about President Deby's son, who's been appointed as interim leader. Let me ask you, does President Deby's son command enough respect from the military to be able to take on this mantle?
First of all, before we come to President's son, there is no hypocrisy from France of any country here in Chad. President Deby is the one who brought about democracy. Before him was Hissène Habré. There were no political parties. There were no such a thing called civil society. There is no syndicates. So when President Deby came, he opened free press, authorized political parties, authorized the organization of civil society, and the syndicates of all the socio-professional groups. So everybody has his, he want to create, he has his party, want to create, he has his private radio or TV, he has his private journal, and people associated the political parties, the national TV was open for all the political parties, and he organized a national conference, inclusive national conference, where all Chadians from all walks of life participated. So Deby is the one who brought about democracy. He's the one who brought about civil society. So talking and saying that his power and his force was an expense of civil society, I think that's not true. To come to his son, Mr. Mohammed Idriss Deby, he's a general, 4-star general, and he won in the military promotions orderly, and he participated in the liberation of Mali from the terrorist group, and he was the deputy commander of that operation. So he was also exposed to the northern part of Chad when the operations. He liberated the northern part of Chad from the rebel groups also. So he's a very quiet, very calm, and he was the head of the presidential guard. And even in the current operation where his dad passed away, he was there. He was there, and he was part of the operation. So, and he is not alone. He has a military council. The way wife in the first place, Chad put the military council in place, because our constitution, the current constitution, which was modified in on consultation basis last year, say that the president has a deputy president or vice president, which will be appointed by the president. The president didn't appoint his vice president yet. And there is, if the president is not there, the vice president will take over. If the vice president is not there, there will be the president of the Senate, or the senators, the Senate. And the Senate is not yet put in place. The whole organization was not in place. So there is a vacancy. That's why at the time where the military, the rebel groups,
Mahamoud,
you yourself mentioned, coming
Mahamoud,
from Libya.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
yes,
let me just get back to this point that you're making in a couple of minutes, because I want to ask Kwesi right now with regards to the fact that the president's son was appointed to lead the country. Kwesi, from your perspective, is this unconstitutional?
I mean, I don't know the constitutionality of this particular case in terms of the Chadian constitution, but I can tell you for a fact that very few, 37-year-olds actually make one-star general. Very few. And for him to be elevated to a 4-star general, I mean, it's just simply ridiculous. And it's a reflection of the autocratic and powerful, behavior of his father that has contributed to all this sense of institutional hollowness. Okay, and it is this lack of institutions that can make decisions and govern that will contribute to the instability, domestic instability that quite a number of us are worried about. So whether constitutionally proper or not, I think the sum total of the experience necessary to hit 4-star, I mean, it's simply ridiculous.
Waleed, let me ask you, could you tell our audience a little bit about this armed group known as FACT? Do we know what these rebels want?
We know for sure. I mean, I just want to touch bases here on the issue of constitutionality, because according to the Chadian constitution, it is the head of the parliament that should have taken place, and then in a period of 45 days, 45 to 60 days, an election should be held with which a president can be assigned to rule. So it's definitely unconstitutional, and it is just galvanizing the grip of the military. See, the Chadian people have been struggling to make a transition to democracy. For us to say that Deby has brought about democracy, I mean, this is a system of governance that lacks transparency, lacks accountability, and there is no alternation in governance. I mean, why should it take Deby more than 3 decades to assign a vice president? Is it not just a hallmark of African autocracy and authoritarianism here? I think that it's not clear when you just read the declaration of FACT and other groups. I don't think that they have very well articulated their argument. But what is very clear is they make it very clear to us and to the international community that one tribe, one ethnic group cannot dominate politics for more than 4 decades in a region that is very diverse culturally, and there is a high level of heterogeneity here. So this is very clear, and it is very logical that in order for Chad to be stable, it needs more than a strong autocrat. It needs some sort of a declaration of democracy, declaration of civicness and human rights.
Mahamoud, let me ask you this. What do we know currently about the position of these rebel groups throughout the country? What is happening with the military's fight against these rebel groups right now?
First of all, because I have to answer to my 2 colleagues about, for 4-star general. You don't know how, this young man would deserve to be promoted to 4-star. It was not overnight. He participated in all what you are talking now. Chad is stabilizing forces in the region. He either led or the deputy commander in Mali, in the Boko Haram, in the northern Chad. So he, the guy who was tested, and he was ruined, and have been raised in battles. That's from one side. The other thing about it, the president took 3 decades to name a vice president. Actually, the Chadian constitution, he used to have a prime minister. And all these 3 decades, they were a prime minister. It was just last year that the Chadian people, with this large open consultation, they have decided that no more vice president, prime minister. The president must have a vice president, and also president must have only 2 terms. All these modifications were introduced, and also there should be another house, not only the House of the Representatives, should be a House of the senators. And in this House of Senators, there will be assuring the transition when there is the president is not available or the vice president is not available, should be the head of the House. And that these institutions, yes, the new change, it just happened last year, and it's not yet filled out. So there is a gap. And there are times where the rebels, you just asked me this question, rebels is attacking. You said what the rebel wants. The rebel were mercenaries in Libya, as you said in the beginning of this discussion you mentioned. They were fighting with after they were mercenaries. They were paid to do so. Now that Libya reconciled with the different factions among themselves, and they asked all the mercenaries to leave Libya. So they wanted to leave Libya. They want to come back to Chad. They don't want to come back just as citizens. They want to come back and take power, and they want to come back in power. And they had all these heavy materials and all these sophisticated arms. That's why they entered Chad. And President Deby, actually, the one thing which is good news, he has passed away, but he left a unified country, and he left a victorious military. He brought about victory. He defeated all these forces by himself, and then he was injured. So as I said in the beginning, the president's sons were not going to be alone. There is a council, and he has 2 deputies. There is a council from all the different military forces, the people who used to be either the defense ministers, former defense minister, former chief of staff, and if the current chief of staff. These are the people who are leading the army. They are helping him to do the job. He's not alone.
Mahmoud, I'm sorry to interrupt you again, but we are starting to run out of time, so I need to go to Kwesi here. Kwesi, how crucial is the Chadian military when it comes to efforts in combating armed groups in the Sahel, and how large a role do they play?
Well, I think they've been fairly effective in combating Boko Haram, in helping, MINUSMA in Mali, but also certainly in the Central African Republic. But Deby's desire for power and expressing and extending his regional force actually led him to support the Sahel rebels in the Central African Republic, something that ordinary people just don't buy. Now, I understand where the ambassador is coming from. But no, this is about the Chadian people and not about the establishment of a dynasty, okay? Much as his arguments are sweet and flowing and convincing, I can assure you, the people of Chad just don't want these empty assurances anymore. If there's a true belief in their ability to transform that country, it should be about building institutions, strengthening those institutions, and ensuring that one ethnic group, narrow, violent, armed, intimidating, exclusive, does not continue to have access to power. That will continue to be stabilized.
All right, we've run out of time, so we're going to have to leave our conversation there. Thanks so much to all of our guests, Mahamoud Bechir, Waleed Madibo, and Emmanuel Kwesi Aning. And thank you too for watching. You can see this and all of our previous programs again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Mohammed Jamjoom, and the whole team here, bye for now.